Hey, it's Chris Jenkins here. Welcome to episode 4 of the podcast. And I'm so sorry that it's probably been a good 2 weeks or so since the last episode. A lot has been going on. Ironically, even though we're still in isolation, lockdown, all that, a lot has been going on. And I'm going to get into that. But to begin with, we essentially have a podcast name. Now, I had created about a list of probably like 50 different names, and I kind of narrowed it down to a handful that I liked, and I created an Instagram poll earlier today, and it was between the one that I initially preferred, which was Mind and Rhythm, and it was between that and Off the Kit. And it's amazing that I'm already struggling to remember when this is the podcast. But yeah, it actually turned out that about 80% of you liked Off the Kit, and I do agree. I think it has more of a ring to it, so I guess that's what we're going to go with, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm against it. It was just that initially I did like Mind and Rhythm, but we'll see, and it's always going to be possible for me to change the name down the line, I suppose, but we'll try to keep some consistency, and I do like Off the Kit. And I also really appreciate everyone who did vote in that poll. So welcome to the Off the Kit podcast. I'm going to have to get used to saying that. Also, last episode, in episode 3, I did mention that I was going to post an Instagram story, essentially a Q&A, and so that I could have questions specifically for this episode. And I would read them out, and also the person or the sender of the questions. Unfortunately, and I'm not sure if this is an update, but usually when I would post a Q&A on Instagram, I could then, it disappears after 24 hours, but I've always found that if you just go into your archive, I could still access those Q&As and see all the questions. But weirdly enough, that doesn't seem to show up anymore. So it's sort of frustrating because now I've lost all those questions, and this is the second time this has happened. First time for the podcast, but it happened in a previous Q&A where I wasn't able to go back and see the questions. So that was kind of frustrating, but I'm going to begin with probably one of the only questions I really do remember standing out, and I'm kind of biased because it's also from a close friend of mine, Sam. But I remember him asking essentially something along the lines of, how has time away from drums made you perhaps reconsider your passion? It was something like that. And obviously this is in reference to the fact that during this COVID lockdown, I haven't been able to play drums. It's very much just been practice on the pads and pillows. And even that, I haven't done that much of. Again, as stated in previous episodes, I've spent a lot of time composing and some other things which I'll get into. But to get back to the question, how's it made me reconsider, I guess, my passion, what I consider to be a large sum of my life and even identity? Well, this honestly has been one of the most difficult periods of my life simply for that reason. Drumming and playing drums is just such a huge and integral part of, again, I guess, my identity and who I feel I am as a person, and maybe what my destiny even is. And so to sort of have that stripped away from me has been really difficult and forced a lot of reflection. And I think, in all honesty, I maybe didn't spend enough time reflecting on that because I was avoiding it and avoiding the pain of that. Obviously I'm still always tapping on things, and I was reminded of how much I miss drumming, but I feel like it's really taken its toll in that I've not even really been watching many drum videos. I've, again, not even spent that much time really practicing on pillows and pads like I could be. I've only really done it when I want to post a clip from my Instagram or maybe go over a quick lesson or something like that. But other than that, I really haven't done much. And I think it sort of initially it led me astray in that I was then, pretty down about that. And although I was still putting in immense amounts of hours into my composing and songwriting, and even the podcast, and doing a lot of research regarding those things, especially the logistical side of them. Um, Again, just I feel like some of that maybe was in fear of really coming to terms with the fact that I haven't been able to play drums, I think. And in all honesty, that led me to some bad habits and at times lack of productivity. And because I think I also did burn myself out, I mentioned, I believe in episode 2, how I was working myself to points of delirium at times, and that was something I knew I couldn't sustain, but I wanted to sort of ride out, because in that mind state, it felt like a unique opportunity and experience in a messed up way to then create and compose more music under that circumstance. And as I previously described, that sort of filter. But, thankfully I'm not working myself to that sort of extreme anymore. And I have a much stronger sense of control now. Or not even sense, I just do have a lot more control over myself at the moment. And so, I don't know that I have an answer really for that question, because, well, I guess I do. I mean, like, drums is still, I know it's my number one passion, and what for the most part, I feel, is living and breathing inside of me. And I've, at this point, I guess I'm biased in that I've just put in so many years and hours and time and passion and love into it. It's not something that I think would just kind of disappear, or that I would decide is not for me anymore. But I guess there's always a potential for that, which is kind of scary to think about, but only because it's what I've been so accustomed to. So in a way, it's something I could view as very much a test of that passion, maybe, and I guess how badly I really want it. But it definitely has been a bit of a mind fuck, so to say, because, what my dream is and entails is playing live performances and touring and playing music. And during this whole situation, that's something that's just not possible. So say if this situation were to persist, then that simply wouldn't be an option. For the most part, obviously there'd be some ways of getting around that, performing elsewhere in isolation, but for me that's just not really been an option at the moment. But I guess this helps me tie into what I really wanted to sort of get into, I guess, this episode. And that was the fact that in 12 years of playing drums, I've never spent this long away from the drums. I believe it's maybe been 3 months or so now. It's, as most of you can imagine and probably relate to, time is just a bit of a weird concept at this point. But I don't know. It sort of, I felt like, led me astray, and it really brought out a lot of emotions, and I don't want to say dark thoughts, but it was just a lot of heavy contemplation. And what also happened was the fact that then I still wasn't eating, or hadn't been eating a lot, and it's been astounding to me as of recent, because I feel like I really started to turn things around about a week ago. If you know, you know. I really wasn't eating as much as I should have, and it's not to say I was starving myself, but again, not eating as much as I should have. And I found that a huge correlation was between lack of food intake or calories and my emotions and my emotional well-being, my mood. I found that I tended to feel perhaps a lot more negative, just in my outlook, I believe. I don't think I really brought out too much of it necessarily. Maybe more when I was by myself, I felt more emotional. But the point being that I found and very much realized that I needed to have a healthier relationship with food. And it's because I think for a long time, and I'm at fault for ingraining this in myself, that I've viewed eating as more of a chore, which I know is not the case for a lot of people. They love eating and very much struggle to do the opposite and to eat less. For me, it's always been the other way around. Food tends to get in the way, or that's what I've always thought, and I've just wanted to continue to be engrossed in what I'm doing, and food just becomes this whole distraction, and you have to go buy the ingredients and prepare, and sometimes I would feel lethargic after eating, which probably had to do with the quality of the food as well. But that's something I've very much worked on, and without making this completely unrelated to music and drumming, that was affecting my productivity, and I think also perhaps influencing a certain level of pessimism regarding the fact that I haven't been able to play drums. So sorry, that's how I wanted to tie it together. But it's funny because I started to really take control over that, and I did that through really trying out new recipes, trying to learn and expanding my knowledge and arsenal of meals, recipes. And it's really made me view it all in a new light, and it's something I do now feel a bit more passionate about. And I think the biggest thing for me has been the fact that I've seen the clear impact it's had on my mind state and productivity. And this is probably the most obvious thing to most people. But it goes to show how I think I've just been so lost in this spiral in recent weeks prior of not being able to pursue and fulfill and do what I love most, but then trying to remain hyper productive at home with songwriting, and I have definitely made a lot of progress in that regard. But for me, drums is still my number one thing, and so to not be able to do that, and then also having a lack of food intake, it kind of created a lot of negative emotion, and that was something that I think, not to an extreme manner, but it reached a bit of a breaking point, and I just realized that this is something that can't go on, and I need to make a change, and I need to make that change so that I can set myself up better for what I believe that this will come to an end, this whole lockdown, and life for the most part will return to normal. And so I want to be a much better version of myself once I, return to regular life, as opposed to being in a more depressed state. I suppose I've always been very prone to depression, just mostly because I'm someone who thinks a lot and very deeply, and so I can get very tied up in thoughts. And again, that's very much what went on in recent weeks, questioning my passion and my purpose. And but it's funny again how much of it I think really had to do with just food intake. It's been quite astounding. And so that really forced a lot of reflection on habits and health, mental health, and the fact that eating allowed for better productivity, longer sustained hours. And also, I think another thing I was able to do as of recent was to learn to set boundaries and be okay with just having downtime. But at the same time, healthier downtime. Again, because I have a very addictive personality, and I tend to be very all in. It's like if I'm going to have downtime and, I don't know, maybe play a game or watch videos or something, then it goes all in again. So it's learning to set those boundaries, and something that even helped was just to set a timer. I'd never really considered doing that before, funnily enough. So that really helped. And I've also been practicing now more on the pads, and obviously it's not the same, but I need to keep myself somewhat sharp. And so I'm happy that I am making steady progress again in that regard, and picking the sticks up and actually playing, even if it's not behind a drum kit. Because although I'm always tapping, I'm sure it's still going to help neurologically, or at least in terms of motor patterns, to still be using sticks. So that's been really helpful. And so a few other things that have made a huge difference as of recent has been my reconnection with cold showers. I'm someone who used to take cold showers for a long time, particularly when I lived in the Netherlands. That's where I started taking them. That was probably about 2 to 3 years ago, and I took them almost religiously for probably close to 2 years. I mean, at one point I was almost addicted to the feeling. There's an immense amount of benefits to cold showers, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, and if not, there's you just search Wim Hof, Wimhof, or is it double F? I think it's just one F, but he is a massive proponent of cold immersion and very much explains the science behind it. And there's tons of benefits. You get out of a hot shower and you feel cold and have to dry yourself off. With cold showers, it's the opposite. You get out, you have this warm glow for what seems like hours. It's much better for your skin, much better for your hair, and most importantly to me, even though there's a multitude of benefits, is that you just feel alive, and it's very meditative. And for me, who is someone who showers basically first thing in the morning, it's the ultimate way to... I just feel like it's one of the best ways to start the day, because I try to put as much weight as I can on myself in terms of my productivity and what I want to accomplish for the day in regards to composing music, working on content, working on my website, which I know I haven't spoken too much about, but I'll do that another time. The Instagram content, still getting in practice some way or another in isolation, drumming wise, and everything. So for me to start the day off with something like a cold shower, which is, the most obvious thing about it is the fact that it's really uncomfortable. But initially, this is something that you can get better at, and it truly, truly trains your mind to gain control and to not be so susceptible to external stimulus, especially like the sensory kind. I mean, when you... like a lot of things, it's so much worse when you try fight it and you get riled up and you're even more tense. It makes almost any situation worse. But one thing a cold shower can teach you, and very much has for me, is that you are capable a lot of the times, and conquering something like, no matter, even if you're only in for 30 seconds or 5 minutes, to stand in freezing cold water and to learn to have control and to focus on breathing and be present. Because I can guarantee you, and this is another huge benefit for me, is that someone who's kind of like a chronic overthinker, if you're stood in freezing cold water, there's nothing you're really thinking about other than, God damn, it's freezing right now. And so to be able to attain control and to become relaxed and comfortable, and often you'll find after the first 20-30 seconds a cold shower becomes much, much easier. So my long-winded explanation is the fact that I'm just trying to make the point that accomplishing something like that and getting out of the shower feeling fresh, feeling alive, invigorated, breathing, just really sets me up for a productive day. And I stopped taking cold showers for almost a good year. So the fact I'm back to them now just feels like I've reconnected with myself. And it's been super important. And I've been having much more productive mornings, I feel like, because of it. So that's been awesome. And the other thing also has been, because we've been in isolation, initially I was sleeping until maybe even 1 p.m., 2 p.m. And arguably you could have or manage really any schedule. It doesn't really matter if you don't have a sort of work schedule outside of home, obviously, if you're in lockdown. So, you can wake up at like 5 in the morning, but that doesn't make you a productive person. You can still waste time, etc. But for me, I've gone back to waking up at like 5, 6 in the morning now, just because I find I really, really value and thrive from that sort of peaceful time of the day. Most people are still asleep, and I feel like it gives me time to maybe even get a bit of a head start, which I guess might seem kind of egotistical, but there is that little sort of rush that I feel like I'm kind of it's a chance to get ahead. But for the most part, the fact it's cool, it's quiet, people are asleep, and I just have time to myself and to get on it. And, by the time lunchtime comes around, I've already been at it for maybe 4 or 5 hours, however many hours. And, that's usually when everyone's waking up and still kind of groggy. Oh, and also when you wake up and you're groggy, cold showers are one of the only things that can snap you out of that. Just another fact. But it's been amazing for me waking up early, cold showers. It just really sets me up right for the day, and it's allowed me to sustain a lot more, just longer hours, longer days of productive behavior. And it's not behavior that entails just being busy for the sake of being busy. I definitely see that being a possible fallacy for people who like grind, hustle. It's like you can be kind of unproductive but still busy. For me, I really still try to make sure I'm accomplishing things that I see fit to my vision of just being a better musician and a better person, really. And I can honestly say my music compositions have drastically improved, and I'd say more so than the compositions themselves, my knowledge regarding composition. I've changed the way I compose, rather than sort of just creating one long loop let me elaborate. So I'll set it to a 4-bar or 8-bar loop, and I will come up with some kind of melody, for example, and then I'll add a layer, and then another one, and I'll just create a long list of layers. There might be 20 tracks, 30 tracks. It varies, but I found that by the time I would have this, massive stack of layers and loops, it became so overwhelming to then arrange that into a song and sort of put the puzzle pieces together. It was just so much more enjoyable to get the ideas out, but then the tedious side of it, arranging, I just found really difficult, overwhelming, and I found I would finish maybe 20% of the songs I composed. And I've changed that now, where I, for the most part, actually go as I compose as I go. I start with the melody or the rhythm, whatever it is, and then think, okay, what does it need now? What does it need now? And sort of work my way along. And honestly, now I'm finishing like probably 70 to 80% of the songs I start writing, which has just been amazing, and also at a much more efficient rate. The other method I've also been doing is creating that huge stack, but then just copying, pasting it all along, and then deleting the sections that I feel necessary that way. So yeah, I've still, again, because I can't play drums, I'm still composing a lot, and I do mean to post some more updates. I've been slacking a little bit with that, but again, in recent weeks, I feel like been necessary for me to take a lot of time to reflect and really just fix up some habits of mine. And you can be hyper productive, but if you have an unsteady foundation, so to say, like a tree, if the roots are rotten or infected, then it's really going to hurt it in the long run, and it won't grow as fruitfully as it could if it was healthy. And so it's really been important to me to get those things in check, as I realized that even though, for example, in previous weeks and probably around episode 1, episode 2 of the podcast, where I was working immense hours, I wasn't taking care of myself. And I knew subconsciously, not even subconsciously, I knew myself that that was not sustainable. And so, now waking up early and having a cold shower. And the other thing has also been exercise. My God, I've mentioned that I used to be a personal trainer in the past, and I've been so sedentary in recent weeks, especially sat down writing music all day and tapping on the practice pads or whatever. So the other thing I've started to introduce, although I'm only 2 days in, so that's why I don't want to boast about it, but just going on a walk in the morning. And again, when it's quiet, there's hardly anyone out, and with the temperature now, it's nice and cool, and it's not as cold as it was in previous months. So that's been amazing for me. But yeah, getting all these things checked and sort of in order again: food, diet, just diet, sleep, having a healthier routine, managing my mental health better, and exercising more has just really allowed me to have more, not only productive days, but fulfilling days. And I would really recommend that, because I feel like a lot of creatives and musicians tend to be a little bit, how do I put this? Maybe scattered in nature, or, I think that it's sort of what entails a creative, right? Is you're all in your head, and you're bringing these ideas from the ether, from wherever they come from. And that means that you're very much stuck inward, trying to express outward, right? So my point being that a lot of musicians and creatives, I think, can become susceptible to their own creativity and not take care of themselves. And also the situation that we're currently in, all being in lockdown, I think that's very, very possible and likely scenario, maybe for a lot of creatives. Definitely has been for me. So it's been really nice to feel that I have a lot more control. So it's been really nice to just feel like I have a lot more control and over my well-being, and that sets me up for more productive days. And speaking of, I've also gotten much more consistent again with my uploads on Instagram in terms of my drum videos. Obviously, because I can't drum at the moment, I'm trying to savor the videos from my archives, but I realize there's still a lot of videos in my archives that I can be uploading, and that doesn't mean I can't still elaborate or teach, because I've found very much so that people probably like that content the most, or at least the majority do, where I'm actually giving value in that sense, rather than just playing and sort of being like, well, watch me. So that's, I'm actually honestly really excited now to see where this takes me, because I feel like I did reach almost a breaking point, and that's not something I really want to go back to, or at least the way of life I'd like to return to. So I feel like I'm very much headed upwards. And in regards to, also, this was another thing I wanted to say. So I posted an Instagram story where this was probably the first or second day kind of back onto uploading, at least in terms of my stories. Usually I'll upload an Instagram post maybe once it was always every day, but now during lockdown, maybe every other day. I've started doing that again. But the stories I'm trying to be consistent with again, and keeping those pretty much daily, and offering some sort of insight or value or lesson or anything that's on my mind, or just what I'm doing, really. I feel like there's no excuse not to be. And again, I think that was something I'd just been slacking on so much with in previous weeks, just because I wasn't taking care of myself. But that's been so much easier. And in fact, the first day wasn't very easy. I simply asked myself, what is something I could record, no matter how detailed or not that would provide some level of value. And, one thing that I came up with was, why not just go over this stick trick? It's like the only stick trick I can do. Why not just show it and explain it? And I may as well now because it's super easy. But it's just between the index and the middle finger, and it's sort of this motion. And you just have to practice that twirling motion. Now you see from this angle, it doesn't have much flair. It doesn't look that cool, but when you do it from the side, it kind of, I'm trying not to hit things around me, but it tends to look a lot cooler and has a lot more flair. But anyway, so I posted that and got a really positive response. And my next story then, I thought, well, why don't people send in videos of them doing that stick trick? And oh my god, I don't know if it's a lot. To me, it's a lot, but I got probably 20 or 30 odd submissions from people all around the world, all walks of life. And this was in the span of about 24 hours, because that's how long a story lasts, right? So I was what I felt like flooded with these videos from people that, have never even messaged me before, that I weren't even aware watched my videos. And I became much more aware of that and felt this sense of community when that opened. That was an opportunity that opened up dialogue with me, and again, people who have been watching my videos or content and enjoying my stuff, but have never sort of communicated with me. And so that was just, it was exhilarating, and it made me feel so good, and it was just such a positive feeling, and it reminded me of the sort of impact that I'm capable of, potentially having, even though I know that was just a simple stick trick. But it's more the phenomenon itself that's, I think, important to me there. And so that really lit sort of a fire up my ass to be consistent in that regard and to continue to provide value, because, things like this or examples like this just fuel that sort of obligation I feel to provide value, especially to those who have apparently been watching my videos for so long, or really enjoy my content, or derive value from it. So that was really, really reassuring. And I think since I've been pretty consistent now, the Instagram stories, and just including, or just being consistent with them and trying to maintain that, sense of community, because it's there, and it's hard for me to see when I'm not putting in the time or effort into it, and I feel like those people deserve it. So at the same time, I think it was important that I took time away from myself, but initially it wasn't for the right reasons. It was that I think I was just lost and sort of numbing the pain in ways, drinking and stuff. So I'm really happy that's not the case at the moment. Again, nothing extreme, so please don't worry. But yeah, I really see some great content to come, at least in my head. You guys aren't aware of it, but I do have a lot planned, lined up, and I'm very optimistic, and I feel much better. Again, eating better, waking up early, doing the cold showers, doing the damn thing, and I really do plan to be consistent with it, because that's going to be the most important thing. Obviously, it's like people who start a new diet or whatever it may be, and then they discontinue after a week, then it's not really that useful. So I do really see this remaining a lot more permanent, at least till normal life returns. Then we'll see. But no, I definitely do see it being the case, because it's just been such a contrast from how I've felt and what my outlook has been like in the previous weeks. I was just so wrapped up in my thoughts, and I just didn't get out my head. I wasn't physically exerting myself. I wasn't really doing much in that regard. I was just overthinking a lot, and just, even though when working sort of obsessively and in an unhealthy manner. So I'm glad that's all changed. And again, I'm sorry I've rambled and probably repeated the same points about a million times, but I did make that disclaimer in most of the episodes. So yeah, I think that's probably a good point to end it at. Sorry if it wasn't super drum related, music related. That's again something for me to kind of come to terms to with in future episodes, just because I tend to be kind of scattered and have a lot to talk about, and sometimes it might not seem like it's always the most related to drums and music, but usually it is. Again, in terms of routine foundation, having a healthy foundation and habits will facilitate a healthier musical career, at least for me. I believe that. So yeah, if you've listened this far in, then thank you so much. And if you have been watching my stuff on Instagram, I really appreciate that. And if you even were one of the people who submitted a video of you doing a stick trick, then thank you so much. It was the most flattering, humbling thing I even said on my Instagram that I've ever done with it. And I definitely plan to do more stuff like that. It gave me this sense of community that I've never felt in my Instagram. It's, I think, in a lot of ways felt quite detached, and maybe a lot, that's a whole other topic, but a lot of social media has felt like that for me, I guess, in retrospect, because I'm doing my own thing. I just press record and kind of send it off into the social media world. And obviously I interact and have very great interactions and conversations with people who support and follow and watch my stuff and talk to me, but that just took it to a whole new level, because I got to actually see the faces and to see people participate in something that was so simple. And I think that's really what makes it so beautiful and makes me want to do it again. I definitely will. God, honestly, it was amazing. It was amazing. But yeah, thank you so much. This was episode 4. I'm not sure how long or short it's been. I'll try to be a lot more consistent with these. I was going to get into my next album. I'll save that for the next episode. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.